Hello and welcome to Opera Road Trip, Operavision's two-year podcast series exploring opera from its 16th century Italian roots to its role today across Europe and beyond. I'm your host, Sebastian Schwarz, and after our January special on singing competitions, we are now back on the road, and in today's episode, let's go and explore Croatia. My guests for this episode are Iva Hraste-Socho, the General and Artistic Director of the Croatian National Theatre, and the two singers Diana Haller and Marko Mimica, who will join me in a little while to help us understand the role of opera in their country. Croatia is a small country in terms of population, just under 4 million inhabitants, but an outsized presence on Europe's tourist map. It is blessed with one of the most striking Mediterranean coastlines, a dense constellation of about 1,200 islands, around only 50 of which are permanently inhabited. The historic and picturesque port cities, such as Split and Dubrovnik, as well as the Sardinia-like crystal-clear waters. This is the Croatia most of the world knows. Each year, Croatia welcomes roughly 5 times as many visitors as it has citizens, and around 95% of them experience only this coastal world. Yet inland Croatia tells a very different story. Its capital, Zagreb, lies closer to Vienna and Budapest than to Dubrovnik, and historically, culturally and musically, much of the country has been shaped by Central Europe rather than the Mediterranean. This contrast between a seasonal, outward-facing Mediterranean Croatia and a year-round Central European one shapes the country's cultural realities in profound ways. Opera, by its very nature, depends on permanent infrastructure, trained ensembles and year-round audiences, all of which are difficult to sustain in a country where population density is low, resources are concentrated in a single metropolis, and international attention is largely seasonal and far away from this capital. Add to this the fact that Croatian musical life developed at the crossroads of Italian, Austrian, Hungarian and Slavic traditions, and you begin to understand why opera in Croatia has always existed in dialogue rather than dominance. But let's hear some music first. Before and after our usual historical overview, I have 2 excerpts for you from Judita by Frano Parac, an opera first performed in 2000, here in a production by the Croatian National Theatre from 2025, which some of you may remember from its broadcast on Operavision. To understand opera in Croatia, it helps to take a step back, not only musically but historically. Croatia has always been a borderland, geographically between the Mediterranean and Central and Southeastern Europe, politically between empires, culturally between languages and traditions. One decisive moment comes in the early 17th century, long before the birth of opera. In 1527, faced with the advancing Ottoman Empire, the Croatian nobility made a strategic choice. They elected to place themselves under the protection of the Habsburg monarchy. This was not a conquest, but a decision taken for survival, and this choice would shape Croatian history for centuries, just as it would determine Croatia's cultural orientation. Now, under Habsburg rule, Croatia became firmly embedded in the Central European cultural sphere, with Vienna as a political and artistic reference point. This had concrete consequences: shared administrative and educational structures, participation in imperial cultural networks, and early exposure to theatrical and musical forms circulating through the monarchy. Opera arrived in Croatia not as something exotic, but as part of a shared European repertoire. Italian and German works traveled with touring companies between Vienna, Graz, Prague, Ljubljana, Trieste, Zagreb, and the Adriatic cities. At the same time, Croatia's long coastline kept it closely connected to Italy. Venetian and later Italian musical life influenced cities like Dubrovnik, Split, and Rijeka, reinforcing opera's presence from the south as well as from the north. But protection did not mean political autonomy. As the 19th century progressed and nationalist ideas spread across Europe, the Habsburg authorities increasingly viewed these movements with suspicion, including in Croatia. Cultural expression was tolerated, even encouraged, as long as it did not become political. This tension is crucial to understanding Croatian opera. Opera was heard in Croatian lands long before Croatia had operas of its own. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, audiences heard Mozart, Rossini, Donizetti, and others, usually in Italian or German, performed by visiting companies. What was missing was not opera as a genre, but opera as a form of self-definition. That changes in the 1840s. On the 28th of March 1846, in Zagreb's Old City Hall, Vatroslav Lisinski's Ljubav i zloba, Love and Malice, premiered. This moment is often described as the birth of Croatian national opera, and not without reason. The opera is written in Croatian by a Croatian composer for a Croatian audience, and it emerges directly from the Illyrian movement, which sought to affirm Croatian language and culture within the Habsburg framework. The circumstances of the premiere underline how closely art and politics are intertwined. The first planned performance had to be postponed after the singer, cast in the leading male role, was seriously wounded during political unrest connected to nationalist agitation. Lisinski's opera does not challenge the Habsburg system through form. It uses the familiar language of romantic opera, but it quietly challenges it through meaning. Unlike earlier Slavic language operas written for imperial courts, Ljubav i zloba emerges as a part of a national awakening, not a courtly or dynastic project. Opera here becomes a cultural statement, just like with Giuseppe Verdi's operas in the same period in Italy. In the decades that followed, Croatian operatic life became institutionalized. A central figure here is Ivan Zajc, who in the late 19th century helped shape a permanent professional opera in Zagreb. His opera Nikola Šubić Zrinski, premiered in 1876, became a cornerstone of Croatian opera. The famous chorus Uboj, Uboj has long since escaped the opera house, functioning almost as a collective cultural memory, a reminder that opera could articulate history, identity, and emotion simultaneously. From this point on, opera in Croatia was no longer episodic. It was embedded in public life. The 20th century brought enormous political upheaval to Croatia, and yet, remarkably, a certain continuity in musical life. In 1918, the collapse of the Habsburg Empire ended more than 4 centuries of imperial rule. Croatia became part of the newly founded Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, later renamed Yugoslavia in 1929. This political reorientation shifted cultural gravity southwards and eastwards, but Zagreb retained its role as the country's musical center. Opera did not disappear. On the contrary, the Croatian National Theatre in Zagreb, the Hrvatsko narodno kazalište, founded in 1895, continued to function throughout the interwar period, maintaining a repertoire that balanced the Austro-German canon, Italian opera, and Croatian works. It was during this time that Jakov Gotovac's opera Eros onoga svijeta, in English usually translated as Ero the Joker, premiered in 1935, a comic opera that drew deeply on folk idioms and quickly became the most internationally successful Croatian opera of the 20th century. After 1945, Croatia became a constituent republic of socialist Yugoslavia. While political expression was tightly controlled, the state invested heavily in cultural institutions. Opera houses remained publicly funded, orchestras and choirs were maintained, and contemporary composition was actively encouraged, albeit within ideological boundaries that shifted over time. It was in this post-war context that Zagreb became home to one of the most important contemporary music platforms in Europe, the Music Biennale Zagreb. Founded in 1961 by composer Milko Kelemen, the Biennale brought composers such as Stravinsky, Stockhausen, Cage, Ligeti, and Penderecki to Zagreb, positioning the city as a bridge between East and West during the Cold War. While the Biennale was never primarily an operatic institution, it played a crucial role in expanding Croatian perspectives on music theatre, experimental opera, and interdisciplinary performance. Influences that quickly fed back into operatic thinking, even if not always into the mainstream repertory. The final decades of the century were again marked by rupture. Following the breakup of Yugoslavia, Croatia declared independence in 1991, a process accompanied by war that lasted until 1995. Despite the violence and uncertainty of these years, musical institutions survived. Not unlike today in Ukraine, opera houses continued to function, sometimes under extraordinary circumstances, reaffirming their symbolic role as cultural anchors. Since independence, Croatian opera has existed in a European landscape shaped by international mobility, co-productions, and changing audience expectations. New works have been created, though not in large numbers. The core repertoire remains historically rooted, while contemporary experimentation often finds its home outside grand opera, a legacy that can be traced back to institutions like the Zagreb Biennale. Institutions such as the Croatian National Theatre in Zagreb remained stable reference points, while regional theatres and smaller initiatives expanded access and experimentation. Today, opera in Croatia functions within a European network rather than as a self-contained national school. Its singers, conductors, and directors move easily between Zagreb, Vienna, Berlin, Milan, and beyond, and often return. This is perhaps Croatia's most characteristic operatic trait, rooted in history, shaped by empire, and fundamentally outward-looking. Opera here was never about dominance or scale, it was about belonging, culturally, linguistically, and artistically within Europe. But now it is time for our first guest for this episode. I welcome Iva Hraste Socho, General and Artistic Director of the Hrvatsko Narodno Kazalište, the Croatian National Theatre in Zagreb. Iva, welcome to the Opera Road Trip. Now, you started out as a singer yourself, didn't you?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. So, yes, I was a singer. I was a soloist in this very house where I'm general manager now. So this is also a good thing because I know a lot of people from before. I think it's good to combine all these experiences that we gain through life. Also, I was a diplomat, so these skills are also helpful in many situations that I'm going through. And I was a member of the theater council because I was assistant minister for a while. So I managed to know this managerial part of the theater even before. So when I became general manager, I think this made my job easier at the beginning. Now I'm finishing my first mandate and I'll start my second mandate in fall. So we are on a smooth track, I would say.
We have already heard about the peculiar geographical and demographic situation in Croatia and about the first Croatian opera. As a singer and a theatre director, what makes your theatre specifically national or specifically Croatian beyond its name?
Well, what is very important to mention in this particular case that we have a long tradition. Not only the creation of the first national opera, Love and Malice, but also the institutional establishment of the Croatian National Opera in Zagreb. First, it was drama theater 165 years ago, but then opera followed very quickly. So we were celebrating last year, 2025, 155th anniversary of the Croatian National Theatre Opera in Zagreb. We have a nice building, we are institution, but of course, without the singers, without the artists, it's not the same thing. They create actually our tradition and they make us good in this field. So I can start from the old singers, as to mention Milka Trnina, then Zinka Milanov, who participated in laying the cornerstone of the new Met. She was really active in the old Met as well. To this middle generation, Ruža Pospiš Baldani, Dunja Vezović, Vladimir Ružđak, Tomislav Neralić, and so on. We had really big names in our history, but to the younger generations like Evelyn Novak, like Tomislav Mužek, like Diana Haller, Marko Mimica, who are really active also not only in Croatia, but also international.
How do you think about the balance between the international repertoire and Croatian works? Is it a question of obligation? Who, if not the National Theatre, should perform Croatian repertoire? Is there an audience expectation? With the podcast, we've visited Ireland and Ukraine. Do Croatians know their Croatian operatic heritage?
I think the balance is always the key issue in programming everything, ballet, opera, and drama theater, of course. We try to keep this balance also in opera. Our main program consists mainly, I would say, of the classical world repertoire, especially because our chief conductor is Pier Giorgio Morandi, who is conducting from Metropolitan Opera and Vienna State Opera, and then in Zagreb. We are really proud of him. So he's really keen into this high level of the Italian and French repertoire in our house. But at the same time, we try to keep also the Croatian opera, but not only this type of heritage opera like Nikola Šubić-Zrinski or Ero the Joker, but also contemporary opera. So we, in the last 3 years, we had 2 contemporary operas. So we try to keep this balance because we think that our role is not only to present Croatian operas, but be like the institution that have this duty to create new heritage. What's also interesting, when we put Ero or Zrinski on the repertoire, it's sold out immediately. So Croatian public really likes it, although they're very old, and these stagings are old. They're 30 years old, but we still keep it and refresh it from time to time because the staging are really nice.
What role do smaller or regional companies play in Croatia? And are there any collaborations you feel worth mentioning?
Well, as you mentioned, there are operas in Rijeka, Osijek, and Split as well. They're, of course, our partners. We work quite closely because our Ministry of Culture established one program called Coordination between the national theaters, like consortium, and we exchange our productions and we do co-productions. So this is a good way to collaborate. Of course, we are the biggest theater and we have this long tradition of opera, but we also work very closely with our partners from the other national theaters. When we talk about tourism, we work also closely with Tourist Board in Zagreb, because maybe you have heard about Zagreb Advent and Zagreb Classic. So we always have this cooperation with them. This is another kind, of course, productions or shows that we produce for them. But it's nice also to give open air concerts in the middle square of Zagreb. So this is another way, I think, of the popularization of the opera as well. This is also important to mention that we have a good collaboration with Music Biennale Zagreb, a very old and renowned festival of contemporary music. So we every 2 years we have collaboration with them, either in opera or in ballet. So we commission new works, I would say, constantly.
Your main stage is a prominently located, beautiful and monumental building. You mentioned from 1895 by the Viennese architect duo Fellner and Helmer, who were responsible for a whole number of new theatre buildings during the K&K period. But you also have recently built a new stage, haven't you?
Yes, just recently. We opened the second stage in November 2025. And it's funny comparison, but I think it's a coincidence, but it's nice to say that this building, the old one, historical one, was built in a year and a half. And we have managed to build a new stage in a year and a half.
I also remember when I got to visit your beautiful theater that there was a very historical artifact in your theater that I don't know whether the audiences actually get to see it. I took a picture of it. And I actually used it because hidden in the foyer area, there's a WC that is rumored to have been put in for the visit of the Emperor Franz Josef.
Emperor.
Yes.
It's not a rumor, it's a fact, actually. Wow. Yeah, because the emperor opened the theater in 1895, and you have to have a toilet, of course, for the emperor. So it's still in use. We use this, it's called State Salon. We use it for our guests, for the intermissions or for some cocktail parties. And it's always like curiosity to show them the emperor's toilet.
If we look 10 years ahead, what would you like international audiences to associate with opera in Croatia?
Everything what we said until now, when it comes to our tradition and 155 years of establishment of the Croatian National Opera, this is the foundation how to build a future, of course, with new generation of artists. What is really important for me and my team, we would like to be more internationally present. We are participating, of course, in Opera Europa, in Fedora. We are broadcasting at the Opera Vision. I think this is a very good way to connect with our partners and with our future partners, and to be renowned in even more in opera world that we are now. I think our festival helps with it, our Zagreb Opera Festival that we established 3 years ago. With this festival, the audience can see the titles that are not on the repertoire at this moment. And of course, the opera companies that were not present a lot in Zagreb. We always start with our show, so our performance is the first, and we think it's a good way that the audience can compare Anyway, the international presence is what really is important for us.
It has been a pleasure having you on the Opera Road Trip, Eva. Thank you for your time and all the best for your season.
Thank you very much, and I hope your listeners will follow what we do. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Let's now listen to Ero's entrance aria from Eros Onoga Svieta, Ero the Joker, the folky comical opera by Jakov Gotovac from 1935. That is considered to be Croatia's national opera, comparable maybe with how Smetana's Bartered Bride is considered that of the Czech Republic.
Indik gdje ruke daje ogriješ, ni struka tankog da ga obiješ. Zaludu tražiš, grudi mirisne, gdje lice ragbi da se utisne. Ile bijelo garlo da zagrizu zubi, i lusne daji tvoja usna ljubi. Et koji mladi živ taj voljet mora, i ja zato siđo hodo zgora, da potražim koju volim više, nego dušu što pod grlom diše. Za njom ginem, bez nje biti neću, radnje živim, radnje ja umrijeću. Ko ikona, ona mi je sveta, i ja sam Ero sa onoga svijeta. Ravno s neba stigoh ja.
I'm now joined by two Croatian artists that were both born on the Adriatic coast and are now internationally active. Diana Haller was born in Rijeka and Marko Mimica is from Split. Welcome to Opera Road Trip.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. It's great to talk to you.
When you think back to your childhood, was opera already present in any way, or did music come into your lives from somewhere else entirely?
Music was very present in my childhood because I come from an artistic family. So my grandfather was a very known painter. My uncle was a pianist. My grandma, there's a story. My grandma wanted to be an opera singer, but she couldn't because in the years when she was like, we were talking about 1930, 1935, her mother said, this is not a job for an honest woman. And you're not allowed to do that. The interesting thing is that I am Croatian, but I'm partially also Italian because as we know, part of Croatia was Italy, and Italians came to Croatia. So my grandma came from Sicily, actually, born in Caserta, so Napoli. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a kind of a mix of, of the Kaiska monarchy and Italians and Croatians. So yes, we had a lot of music in the family.
Mm-hmm. Marko?
Same. When I was a 6-year-old, I was in a way forced to go to a music school. We are 6 children and I'm number 5. And all of my older brothers and sisters got to play cool instruments like violin, piano, guitar. And my mom, she just wanted us to play something, but she wanted everyone to play something else. So I got to play trumpet, which I hated, and I wanted to quit my whole childhood, but my mom was always, she said, no, you must finish the elementary school, and then later you don't have to continue. And then also every Sunday, I don't know if you know, in Croatia, it was very popular show on TV called Opera Box. I'm sure Diana knows it. And yes. We were forced to watch it every Sunday afternoon after lunch. And again, I hated it with really, I couldn't stand it. But like through Opera Box and through music school, I got introduced to the music, and later on, it turned out that my trumpet teacher was also playing the trumpet in Croatian National Theatre in Split. And when I was 13, 14, he started to take me to opera in Split. And I saw, first opera I saw was Rigoletto. Immediately I fell in love. I loved it. He saw my passion for it, and he encouraged me to become an opera singer. Jokingly, he used to say, opera singers earn more money than trumpet players, so it would be better for you to switch.
We also watched Opera Box, but as my grandma was Italian and I grew bilingual, we watched a lot of Rai 1, 2, 3. And so we watched a lot of performances from La Scala. So I remember the Traviata from La Scala with Roberto Alagna, the very famous Wimuti production. And as you maybe know, especially on the coast, we have a big tradition for Italian opera. So, and we, even in Rijeka, I don't know if this is known, but in Rijeka, Puccini came to our theater and was standing on our stage.
Did you ever get to go to Zagreb to go to the opera, or was opera really a local home experience for you?
It was a local experience for me. When I was a teenager, we were still recovering from after the war, right? For us in Rijeka, we didn't have really the money to travel somewhere far away. And even going to Zagreb, having to sleep in Zagreb, that was at the time very expensive. The thing that my parents did for me and sacrificed the family was going to Trieste to private lessons while I was studying in the high school, because this was recommended by a piano teacher who was working in Trieste and who knew a good singing teacher. But traveling around while I was a teenager and seeing opera, that was not the case. I don't know how it was in the south for you, Marco, but for us, it was still the fact that there was a war before. It was still not easy.
Very, very similar. So when I was in high school, I did my high school for singing and liceo in Split. And Split used to do 5 to 6 different operas per season. And a lot of concerts. I was still playing trumpet. So all my musical experience was from Croatian National Theatre Split and musical high school. I also never traveled. And at 18, I went to Zagreb to study opera. And already after a few months, I started singing in a choir at the Croatian National Theatre in Zagreb. And then on my 3rd year, I made my debut as Papageno. And then I kept, for a year or 2, I kept singing in choir and some smaller, medium-sized roles, depending. And then after some time, I just quit choir and kept singing roles, all kind of roles. Some roles that were good for me, that were bad for me, that, but it was a great experience.
Yeah, I think we come from a reality. I don't know as also how much the war had impact on you, Marco, but I do remember also this time, and I do remember the time after, when it was hard. Yeah, we couldn't get everything what we wanted. Yeah. I think this made a strong impact on me as a person that I am today also, and I'm sure that it makes also an impact automatically into the musician that I am, and. It was really a hard time, and we didn't have so much information also. No? I was so happy when our music teacher, when I was a teenager and studying singing, and our teacher brought live in Italy, the very known concert of Cecilia Bartoli, and to listen to this person singing, it was amazing. And then because Dunja Vezovic, again, coming back to her, she said this will be an Italian voice. So my parents said, okay, I know there is Zagreb, an academy in Zagreb, but Trieste is here 60 kilometers from us. This is much closer than Zagreb. That's why for me it was just a natural choice to go to Trieste and not to go to Zagreb.
I remember then hearing you for the first time, Diana, in the orchestra rehearsal room of La Fenice in an audition with Gianni Tangucci. It feels like, I want to say 20 years ago, but I don't want to.
Oh my God. Wow, I even didn't know this. But I remember I did an audition. Yes. Yeah, wow, amazing.
This just goes to tell you about my age, not about yours, obviously. I'm wondering, what did you feel was missing in your earlier training, and what, on the other hand, turned out to be a strength that you recognized only later, or like a blessing in disguise or so?
So do you mean the training in Croatia, so the
Yes.
basic training before going to the conservatory and
or in your case also Trieste? I mean, it's not like Trieste is the golden mecca of
no, of course. Well, what was definitely missing was all the languages. How do you pronounce French? How do you pronounce German? We didn't really learn that in not in Rijeka. Maybe in Zagreb it's another situation, because Zagreb is very German speaking city.
No, for us language is amazing, I would say.
In Zagreb, yeah. But Trieste, we had, of course we did some German songs, but first when I went to London at the Royal Academy to study there I understood what does it mean to sing in French, in English, in German, and what does it mean also acting like Musiktheater, more elaborated acting. And what was definitely the most important thing that I learned in Croatia was discipline. Was learning is very important. All music is great music. Look at everything, not just at Verdi Puccini. This is something special that was given to me from my singing teacher in Rijeka. I don't think I can say that I got a technique, because this I got it much later. Also after London, I would say, maybe also a little bit after. Yes, with Dunja a lot, but also after finishing studies and really seeing on the stage what because I didn't sing roles while I was studying like you, Marco, did. I was really only studying.
In Croatia, I think we get a pretty good education, also when it comes to musical theory, history, solfeggio, repertoire, all kind of instruments. Maybe the problem is that it's at the end of the day, it's a small market. So if you really want to make a living singing and classical music, you can, but it's difficult because there are just not that many opportunities, and there are a lot of singers. And right now, I think, I don't know if Eva told you, but I think right now at Croatian National Theatre in Zagreb, there's a beautiful situation. They have some amazing young voices. Beautiful.
Speaking of amazing, beautiful voices, let's hear Diana sing for a moment. Here's an excerpt of her singing Elettra's aria Doreste Daiace from Mozart's Idomeneo from the Staatsoper Stuttgart. And here's an excerpt of her singing Maria Stuarda and a very recent recording from Varaždin. How would you describe to the audience what makes you recognizably Croatian? Is there a sound, something in your approach, something that you would recognize as Croatian?
I could talk about singers coming from Dalmatia, where I come from, versus singers coming from the area from Varaždin, the very north of Croatia. In the north, Varaždin especially, it's like you hear these cheekbones, but it's like a very round sound, and the tongue, they tend to have the tongue a little bit deeper in the mouth, so it gives, of course, it can be a good thing and a bad thing. Some things everyone has to correct, and but the voices have a completely different color to it. Croatians from the south, where I come from, tend to have this spring in the voice, as I told you, this metallic quality alla Pavarotti. There are so many tenors coming from the islands there. Technique and education, it's a different topic, but I'm just talking about the pure characteristics of the voices from that area. For me, that bright singing, even dark basses, but bright singing with lots of metal, pleasant metal. I think of Pavarotti. To me, he sounds like could be Croatian, and but at the same time, because of the language, although we do tend to speak in an Italianate way, the language is still Slavic. And there are still some vowels and consonants. So there is this mixture of Russian and Italian, and I think it's exactly that, the how we speak in Dalmatia, and you can hear that in the singing.
I really agree with you, Marco, that there is a kind of it's like dividing the south from the north in the quality of the voice and in the way the raw voice is. We are now not talking about technique, we're just talking about the quality of the voice, what the voice naturally does, wants, and yes, I do agree on that. Maybe this is also through the history, we will always also divided the north and the south. But yes, I do agree on that. Nevertheless, I think that each voice can be changed. Of course, we have those two chords, but the way we use them, it's possible to change also the way a sound is.
And I think, we come back to this nature versus culture, right? In every type of upbringing, whether it's, agriculture, if it's growing naturally somewhere in the rainforest, or if we cultivate something, and it's the same with voices, right? We have the natural talent, the natural instrument that's just happens to be in that throat or in that body, but then it depends on all the influences of culturally growing up, linguistic, geographic, the air, I think also the hours of sunshine and so on, which makes a difference in a human being, right? If a young singer in Split, Rijeka, Dubrovnik, or up in the north, Varaždin or Osijek and so on, came to you today and said, I want to do what you do, what would you tell them honestly?
You have to sacrifice a lot. And I do tell that because I do also teach. And but this is my experience. My experience is that everything has to be learned. Maybe I was one of those singers who didn't have naturally, all the tessitura and really did every sound only with the working. That's why I'm saying that the voice can be changed, because I did it myself. This is what I would say. This is what I say to all my students. This is a hard job. It will be harder because there are a lot of cuts in the culture, and there will be always less and less money. So be prepared. It's just maybe to give them not a romantic view of this job. Yeah, that I say this. Yeah.
Marco?
I think it's beautiful how Diana and I have completely different opinions. I'm not saying mine is correct. I'm just saying it's beautiful that we are different. On the other hand, I think operatic singing and opera is only going to get more interesting and better with years. And to young singers, I would say also when it comes to sacrifice, I don't think there should be much sacrifice, first of all. And I don't think this should be hard work. I think this should be playing, of course, but everything, we opera singers, me, myself as well, sometimes we are too egocentric and too entitled. We like to say, oh, it's so difficult, oh, poor us. But we chose it, and I think it must be more like a hobby than actual work. You can have it in your head as a work if it's easier to protect yourself and to separate it. But if you're a true singer musician, you don't leave your work when you come home. It's all like if you have to do too many sacrifices, I would say it's not worth it.
It has been a pleasure having you on the opera road trip today, exploring a little bit of the situation for opera in your home country, Croatia. For our listeners who want to hear more of them, Diana can currently be seen as Mère Marie in 2 different productions of Dialogue des Carmélites at the Danish Royal Opera in Copenhagen and at Staatsoper Stuttgart, while Marco is part of the new production of Luisa Miller at the Wiener Staatsoper. All the best for these upcoming tasks, and thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for listening to today's episode and for all the feedback we're getting for the series. I particularly enjoy seeing your wish list of countries which we should visit next. I thank Iva Hras-de-Socho, Diana Haller and Marco Mimica for joining me on the episode today, and thanks to the OperaVision team for supporting me on this exciting journey of Opera Road Trip. There's plenty more online on operavision.eu, where, apart from finding all episodes of our podcast, don't miss Rossini's L'occasione fa il ladro from the Kammeroper of Theater an der Wien, El Barberio de la Barpies in an exciting new production by Christoph Loy from Theater Basel, or Dostal's Clivia from Theater Magdeburg. This series is curated, edited and presented by me, Sebastian Schwarz. OperaVision is supported by the Creative Europe program of the European Union in the framework of the Opera Europa Next Generation platform. I hope you will join me again for our next episode. Until next time, keep singing, keep questioning, and take care.
Thank you.